My name is Jessie Crawford, and I'm 29 years old. For the past 2 years, I've been in love with a man named Gregory, and for one of those years, we've shared an apartment that I once believed was our forever home. When we first met at a mutual friend's birthday party, I thought I'd stumbled upon something rare, the kind of easy connection people write about in love stories. He had this way of making everyone feel heard, but with me, it felt different, intentional, real. We talked until the candles burned down and everyone else had gone home. By the end of the night, I was already wondering what it would be like to wake up next to him every morning. And for a long time, it was just that quiet morning's laughter over burnt pancakes, arguments about what to watch, and long nights where we made up before either of us could fall asleep. It was normal healthy, or so I thought. But there was one thing I could never quite get used to his ex-girlfriend, Nina. He called her his best friend. They'd dated back in college for about a year before realizing they were better as friends. They'd stayed close ever since. Too close, maybe. At first, I tried to be understanding. Everyone has a past. And Gregory was so reassuring whenever I felt insecure. You've got nothing to worry about, see? Nina's family to me, that's all. So I smiled and nodded because that's what I do. I trust the people I love, even when my gut screams not to. Nina was hard to read. The kind of woman who could charm a room and insult it in the same breath. She wasn't rude to me, not directly, but she had this way of making everything about her. She'd mock other women for liking makeup or posting selfies, then roll her eyes at me for being too quiet. It wasn't malicious exactly, just subtle enough to make you doubt whether she meant it. Still, I told myself I could handle her. As long as Gregory wasn't joining in, it didn't matter. At least that's what I kept telling myself. Everything changed the night Nina showed up at our door. It was a Wednesday, the kind of quiet, forgettable midweek night where nothing should happen. But when I opened the door, I found her standing there with mascara streaked down her cheeks, clutching her phone like it was keeping her alive. Gregory was behind me in an instant. "Nina, what happened?" She looked at him, not me, and said, "He left me, Gregory. He just left." Before I could even process what was going on, she was in his arms, sobbing against his chest. Gregory guided her inside, his voice soft and gentle in a way I hadn't heard in months. He helped her sit down, got her a glass of water, rubbed her shoulder while she tried to speak through the tears. She'd been dumped apparently right before she'd planned to propose to her boyfriend. He'd found a dating app on her phone and assumed she was cheating. Nina swore it was just for fun. Honestly, I thought that sounded insane. Who treats a dating app like a game? But I kept quiet. Gregory didn't. He defended her. "She's not like that, Jessie. You know Nina. She just gets bored sometimes." He looked at me like he expected me to understand, like I was supposed to be compassionate, even though I barely knew what was happening. That night, Nina stayed on the couch. Gregory stayed too, insisting she shouldn't be alone. He told me to go to bed, but I couldn't. I pulled out the fold-out couch and said I'd sleep there with them. Maybe it was petty. Maybe I didn't trust her. Maybe both. In the darkness, I could hear Nina's soft sniffles from across the room. I turned my back to them, but I couldn't fall asleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Gregory whisper, "You'll be okay, I promise." The next morning, I woke up to find them sitting close together on the couch, heads bowed over her phone. She was smiling a fragile, tear-stained smile while he scrolled through something on the screen. When he saw me, Gregory jumped up. "Morning, I was just helping Nina block her ex's number." Nina looked up and smiled, voice sweet. "You're lucky, Jessie. He's such a good guy." Something about the way she said it made my skin crawl. Gregory asked if she could stay just a few more days. She said she was too weak to go home, that being alone right now would break her. I wanted to say no. God, I wanted to, but I didn't. I looked at Gregory's pleading eyes, the same eyes that once made me fall in love, and I gave in. "Fine," I said, "just a few days." Those few days stretched into a week, then 2. Nina made herself at home. She cooked breakfast like she owned the kitchen. She left her slippers by the couch. She laughed with Gregory like they'd never stopped being a couple. And Gregory, he changed. He wasn't unkind to me, just distracted, distant. His laughter came easier when she was around, but it faded when it was just us. One night, I walked into the living room and found Nina asleep on the couch, a blanket slipping off her shoulder. Gregory was sitting beside her, his hand hovering near her arm, as if debating whether to touch her. I froze. He must have heard me because he turned startled. "See, hey, she's just sleeping. She had another breakdown." I nodded slowly. "Right." But as I stood there watching him look at her with that mixture of worry and tenderness, a thought clawed its way up my throat. When did she become the one who needed him more than I did? That night, lying awake beside him, I listened to the soft rhythm of his breathing and realized something horrifying. Gregory wasn't pulling away because he stopped loving me. He was pulling away because he was falling for her again right in front of me in our own home. And the worst part, I had opened the door and let it happen. By the second week, it felt like I was living with strangers. Gregory barely looked at me anymore. Every conversation somehow circled back to Nina, how she was doing, whether she'd eaten, if she was feeling better that day. I didn't even bother asking how he was doing because his entire emotional world now seemed to revolve around her. In our living room, the space that used to smell like coffee and candle wax, Nina's perfume lingered in the air like a ghost I couldn't get rid of. She'd sit there in Gregory's hoodie wrapped up like she belonged. And maybe to him she did. Sometimes I'd catch Gregory watching her while she spoke that soft, nostalgic look people wear when they see a memory come back to life. It gutted me. I tried to reason with myself. She's his friend. She's going through something awful. But even that small voice of reason started to fade when Nina began referring to our place as home. "I'll be home by 8, she'd text Gregory. "Home," I repeated under my breath once. He didn't even notice. It wasn't home anymore, not to me. One Thursday evening, I came back earlier than usual. The house was quiet. The living room lights were dimmed, and Gregory's keys were on the counter, which meant he was home. "Gregory," I called out softly. No response. As I walked toward the bedroom, I noticed the door was slightly ajar. Inside, I heard muffled voices, Gregory's and Nina's. Something in me froze. My body wanted to walk away, but my mind said, "Listen." I stood by the doorway, heart pounding so hard I could barely hear. Gregory's voice. "This was bound to happen. You deserve better." Nina sniffling. "It's just so unfair. He thinks I'm some kind of cheater because of one stupid app. I wasn't even talking to anyone, Gregory." He overreacted. "You just wanted some attention, that's all. You've always needed to feel wanted." There was a silence, the kind that makes your stomach twist. Then Nina said quietly, almost trembling, "You know, Gregory, sometimes I wish I'd never dated him at all. Maybe I should have just stayed with you." The words hit me like a slap. My breath caught. I waited for Gregory to correct her, to say, "No, don't be ridiculous." Instead, I heard him sigh a long, aching sound, and then softly reply, "Sometimes I wish that too." My heart stopped. He kept talking as if my whole world hadn't just shattered outside that door. "Lately, I've wondered what life would have been like if we hadn't broken up. If you and I had stayed together, maybe things would have been simpler." Nina laughed a low, shy giggle that used to belong to me. "So what now?" she asked, voice quivering between sadness and hope. Gregory chuckled. "Now we just try to forget this conversation." But neither of them sounded like they wanted to forget. I couldn't listen anymore. My hand trembled as I covered my mouth, trying not to make a sound. Tears spilled down before I even realized I was crying. In that moment, I realized I was the outsider in my own relationship. They were speaking a language I no longer understood, nostalgia and longing. I wasn't part of their past, and suddenly I wasn't part of Gregory's future either. I turned and walked out quietly, every step echoing in the hallway. My vision blurred, and my chest felt like it was collapsing. I didn't take my bag. I didn't take my keys. I just left. I don't remember much of the drive, just headlights streaking past and the dull hum of the radio, playing a song I used to love. One Gregory once said reminded him of me. By the time I reached the small hotel downtown, my tears had dried into silence. I checked in, handed over my ID with shaking hands, and once I was in the room, I collapsed onto the bed and finally let the sobs out. Not the quiet kind, the kind that scrape out of your chest until your throat burns. How do you grieve someone who's still alive? I cried for the version of Gregory who used to look at me like I was his whole world. I cried for the woman I used to be before I started second-guessing my worth. And most of all, I cried for the home that now belonged to someone else. The next morning, I woke to sunlight cutting across the hotel curtains. My phone buzzed with messages from Gregory. I didn't read them. I blocked him. I blocked Nina. Then I sat up, wiped my face, and whispered to myself, "You're done." But a whisper isn't a promise. Because even as I said it, some foolish part of me still hoped he'd come find me, that he'd apologize, swear that what I heard meant nothing. That night, I dreamt of him standing at the door of our apartment, saying my name like it still mattered. When I woke, my pillow was wet again. I told myself it was the last time I'd cry for him. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. The next few days passed in a fog, muted, colorless, as if the world had turned the volume down. I stayed at that hotel room eating nothing but stale croissants from the breakfast cart and drinking tap water because I couldn't bring myself to go downstairs. My phone stayed silent except for the one friend whose number I forgot to block his friend, actually. When it buzzed again that night, I nearly ignored it. But curiosity or weakness made me look. It was Gregory, using another number. Gregory C. I know you heard us that day. You left the door open when you walked out. Gregory. Please listen. I didn't mean any of it. I was just trying to make Nina feel better. She was falling apart, and I panicked. My chest tightened. He went on and on, apologizing, rationalizing, twisting the story until I could barely tell what was true. It didn't mean anything, he wrote. She was crying, and I was trying to stop her from doing something stupid. You know I love you. You're overreacting, see? Overreacting. That word again, the one men use when they can't face what they've done. I sat there staring at the messages, fingers trembling. For a moment, I almost replied. Almost let him talk me back into the cycle, pity, guilt, forgiveness, repeat. But then I remembered how casually he'd said those words. Sometimes I wish I'd married you instead. You don't say something like that by accident. Still, I didn't block him. Not yet. The next day he called. The same voice that used to make my heart soften now felt foreign. See, baby, please. You took it the wrong way. Nina was a mess. She's like my little sister. I laughed bitterly. You told your little sister you wished you'd married her instead. He sighed. You're twisting my words. No, I said quietly. You twisted mine when I said she made me uncomfortable. You made me feel like I was paranoid. There was a long pause. I heard him breathing slow and heavy. Look, he said finally. I messed up. I shouldn't have said those things. But it's not like I did anything with her. You're just running away because you don't want to face things. I wanted to scream. To tell him that I had faced things every night alone in a hotel room, replaying that conversation in my head until I could recite it word for word. But I didn't. Instead, I said, You've already said enough. Then I hung up. The silence afterward was worse than the noise. It gave my thoughts room to breathe, and I hated what they said. Was I really overreacting? Had I left too soon? Had I misheard something in that room? Maybe he really was just comforting her, and maybe those words weren't as loaded as I thought. But then my mind flashed back to his tone-warm, nostalgic, too intimate for two people who supposedly moved on. And I remembered Nina's smirk that morning when she told me, You're lucky, Jessie. Lucky. It hit me like cold water. I wasn't lucky. I was convenient. Gregory stayed with me because I didn't cause trouble, because I didn't confront, because I smiled through my doubts and called it trust. I'd always believed that love meant understanding. But maybe somewhere along the way, he learned that understanding also meant he could do anything he wanted, and I'd forgive him for it. 2 nights later, I finally texted back. Just one line. I'll be filing for divorce soon. He called immediately. The desperation in his voice almost broke me. See, don't do this. Please. I didn't cheat on you. I didn't mean what I said. I told Nina to leave that day. She's gone now. Then why do I still feel like she's living in our walls? I whispered. He started to cry, quiet, restrained sobs that once would have made me crumble. But this time I didn't feel pity, just exhaustion. It's not about whether you cheated Gregory, I said. It's about the fact that you wanted to. There was silence, then a broken whisper. I love you. No, I said. You love the version of me who never says no. I hung up before I could hear anything else. After that, I finally blocked every number, every email. But the ghost didn't leave. I'd be brushing my teeth and suddenly remember the way he looked at Nina, that flicker of something familiar. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and check my phone, half hoping he'd found another way to reach me, half praying he hadn't. Every day I fought the urge to forgive, and every night I reminded myself what forgiveness had cost me before. Somewhere deep down, I still loved him. But love wasn't enough anymore, not the kind that keeps you small, silent, and second. I looked at my reflection one morning. Eyes puffy, hair, tangled skin, pale, and whispered to the mirror, You're done being soft. Because softness was what he counted on, and softness was how I lost myself. A week passed before I gathered enough courage to return home. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. My closed documents, everything I owned were still there. I told myself Gregory would be at work around that time. I even checked his calendar app, which I still had access to. But when I pulled up to the house, my breath caught. His car was in the driveway, and right next to it, Nina's. For a moment, I couldn't move. I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, until my knuckles turned white. Maybe she'd come to pick something up. Maybe this was just coincidence. But deep down, I already knew better. I reversed immediately and drove away. Ended up in a grocery store parking lot 2 miles from the house, sitting there with the engine off, tears welling, but refusing to fall. He'd lied. Again. She hadn't left. 2 days later, I returned. This time, I brought my friend Melissa with me, partly for help, mostly for protection. When we pulled up, both cars were gone. Good. Inside, the air felt heavy, stagnant. The scent of Nina's floral perfume still clung to the curtains. I moved quickly, grabbing clothes from the closet, my laptop, my journals. I avoided looking at the photos on the wall, the ones Gregory insisted we hang up where he stood behind me, smiling arms around my waist like he'd never let go. Melissa moved quietly beside me, sensing the tension. "You okay?" she whispered. "I just want to be done," I said. But as I zipped my suitcase, the front door opened. Gregory. He froze when he saw me. His expression flickered between guilt and disbelief. "See?" His voice broke. "You came back." "I'm not here to talk," I said flatly. "Just to get my things." He stepped forward. "Please, just hear me out." "No." He looked around helplessly, like searching for an argument strong enough to erase everything. "I told Nina to leave," he said. "I swear. She came back today because she forgot her charger. That's it." I didn't answer. I kept packing. The silence between us was deafening, the kind that used to mean comfort, now thick with resentment. When he realized I wouldn't respond, his voice rose. "You can't just walk out on me like this. We've been through everything together. You think I don't regret what I said?" I zipped the suitcase, turned, and met his eyes. "Then why did you say it?" He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Melissa appeared in the hallway. "You done?" she asked. "Almost," I said. Gregory's jaw clenched. "You brought her here to make a scene." "I brought her here because I don't trust you," I replied quietly. That's when I heard it, another car pulling up outside. My stomach dropped. A few seconds later, the door opened again. Nina. She stepped inside, clearly expecting me not to be there. Her face fell the moment our eyes met. "Jesse," she started softly. "I didn't know you'd save it," I said. Gregory stepped between us. "Don't start this." "Start what?" I snapped. "You mean the conversation we should have had weeks ago. The one where you both admit what you've been doing." Nina's eyes filled with tears. "You don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly," I cut in. "You were miserable. He was bored. And you both found comfort in pretending your feelings were noble instead of selfish." Her lip quivered. "That's not fair. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I love him, but I'm trying to do the right thing by staying away." I laughed bitterly. "You call this staying away?" Gregory tried to reach for me. "See, stop. You're twisting things." "Don't," I said sharply, stepping back. "Don't gaslight me again. You both built this fantasy where you're the victims, the poor star-crossed friends who couldn't help how they felt. Meanwhile, I was in a hotel room blaming myself for being too trusting." Nina covered her face, crying harder. "I never wanted to ruin your relationship, but you did," I said coldly. "And the worst part, you made me pity you for it." The room went silent except for her sobs. I looked at Gregory one last time. His eyes were wet, his mouth trembling like he wanted to beg. But I saw no remorse, only panic at losing control. "I don't hate you," I told him. "I just finally see you." Then I turned and walked out. Melissa followed close behind, holding the door open for me. As we stepped outside, she whispered, "You did good." But my hands were shaking. I wasn't sure if it was relief or grief, maybe both. Behind me, I heard Gregory's voice calling my name. Desperate, broken. But I didn't look back. For the first time in weeks, I didn't stop walking. That was the last time I ever saw them without lawyers. 2 weeks passed. 2 long, empty weeks, where silence was both my punishment and my peace. The divorce papers had been filed. My lawyer said the process might take months, but at least it had begun the slow untying of a knot that had already strangled me. I moved into a small apartment near my office with peeling paint and too much sunlight. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Every morning I opened the windows wide, letting in fresh air as if I could scrub away the residue of that house, their laughter, their whispers, their betrayal. I tried to move on. Work, sleep, repeat. But it's hard to heal when your mind won't stop replaying what you ran from. Then one night it happened. An email. At first I thought it was spam, a new address, a name I didn't recognize. But when I opened it, my stomach turned to stone. From Gregory Dodger 29. New mail. Add Outlook subject. I need you to know. His words filled the screen. See, I'm sorry for everything. I know I have no right to talk to you, but I need you to hear this from me before someone else tells you. Nina and I, we slept together last night. We were drunk, and everything was a mess, and we both felt broken. I don't even know why I'm telling you this, maybe because you deserve honesty after all the lies. It didn't mean anything. It just happened. You made it clear you didn't want me anymore, and I couldn't keep pretending we were okay. I'm sorry, Jesse. You didn't deserve this. I stared at the screen, my vision blurring. My hands were trembling so violently, I almost dropped the laptop. There it was, the truth I'd feared since the day Nina walked through our door. Every doubt, every intuition, every sleepless night, whispering, something's wrong. It was all true. I thought I'd feel anger, maybe even vindication, but instead I just felt hollow, like my heart had quietly imploded, leaving nothing but air and ache. I sank onto the floor, the laptop slipping from my lap. For hours I sat there letting the reality soak in. No screaming, no smashing plates, just the sound of my own heartbeat echoing through a room that suddenly felt too big. When the tears finally came, they came hard, ugly, endless. All those times I'd silenced my instincts to be understanding all the second chances I'd handed him like free passes, they all came crashing down at once. He'd done the one thing I prayed he never would. And worse, he told me in an email like he was handing in a confession to a stranger. I wanted to delete it to erase every word, but instead I forwarded it straight to my lawyer. He replied within minutes. This is exactly what we needed. You did the right thing. The right thing. I should have felt relief. But how could I when the man I once trusted with my whole soul had just put his betrayal in writing? The next morning I called my dad. I didn't even mean to. My fingers just moved on their own muscle memory, dialing the only number that ever felt safe. When he picked up, I couldn't speak at first. Just silence and shallow breaths. See, he said softly. What happened? I broke then. Completely. Between sobs, I told him everything, the email, the lies, the final line that had shattered me. It didn't mean anything. Within 30 minutes, he was at my door. My mom, too, carrying a paper bag full of food like it was the antidote to heartbreak. When I opened the door, my dad just wrapped his arms around me. No questions, no scolding, no, I told you so. Just warmth, just home. My mom set the food down and joined the hug, her voice gentle against my ear. You're not alone, baby. You never were. And that was all it took for me to fall apart again. That night, we sat on the floor eating cake straight from the box. I told them everything I'd been too ashamed to say before, how I'd ignored the red flags, how I'd convinced myself that kindness would fix everything. My dad listened quietly, his eyes soft but sad. When I finally ran out of words, he said, You didn't fail him, Jesse. He failed you. There's a difference. Something inside me loosened then. For the first time, I didn't feel stupid. I just felt human. When they finally left, I stood at my window looking out over the city. The lights blurred through my tears, and I whispered to no one. I loved him so much, and I lost myself doing it. Then I walked to my laptop, opened his email again, and deleted it. Not because I forgave him, but because I refused to give his words another second of space in my life. I closed the lid, took a deep breath, and whispered, You don't get to live in my inbox anymore. For the first time in months, the silence felt different, not empty, but peaceful. Like the calm after a storm that nearly destroyed everything, but didn't. Because somehow I was still here. Broken, yes, but still standing. And maybe that was enough. It's been 3 months since that email. 3 months since I stopped checking my phone every morning with a quiet hope I didn't want to admit I still had. 3 months since I stopped crying at the sight of our old photos and started breathing again like I owned the air in my lungs. The divorce was finalized last week. My lawyer called me while I was at work. Congratulations, Ms. Crawford. It's official. Congratulations. What a strange word for the end of something that once felt like the center of my world. I hung up, turned off my phone, and stared out the office window for a long time. I thought I'd feel relief or freedom or something cinematic, the kind of victory moment people post about online. Instead, I just felt still. Peaceful, quiet, raw. And that stillness was enough. I've started writing again. Not professionally, not for anyone, just small journal entries at night when the city's asleep and I'm finally alone with my thoughts. It started as therapy. Now it feels like confession. I write about the girl who smiled through betrayal because she thought love meant patience. I write about the woman who learned that patience isn't noble when it comes at the cost of self-respect. And sometimes I write about him not with bitterness, but with clarity. I don't miss Gregory anymore. I miss the version of myself I was when I still believed in him. The soft, naive part of me that thought loyalty could save someone who didn't want to be saved. But she's gone now, and I've made peace with that. Last weekend, I ran into one of our mutual friends at a cafe. She looked nervous when she saw me. Jessie, she said carefully, I hope you're doing okay. I smiled. I am. She hesitated before adding, I saw Gregory the other day with Nina. It didn't look good. They were arguing? I nodded, sipping my coffee. They deserve each other. And for the first time, I meant it without venom. Because I no longer needed closure from him. I didn't need revenge or justice or a sorry that came too late. I had my peace. And peace, I learned, is the loudest ending of all. When I got home that night, I found my old wedding album in the moving box. I still hadn't unpacked. For a second, I almost threw it away. But instead, I sat down, opened it, and flipped through the photos one last time. There we were, smiling hands, clasped, eyes shining with a kind of trust that would never exist again. I didn't cry this time. I just whispered thank you. Thank you for teaching me what love should never feel like. Thank you for breaking me enough that I had to rebuild myself stronger. Then I closed the album, slid it into the bottom drawer, and left it there, not hidden, not forgotten. Just done. Tonight, as I write this, the city hums outside my window. I light a candle, pour a glass of wine, and scroll through the posts on my new blog. It's called The Soft Ones. I started it 2 weeks ago to share my story anonymously. At first, I thought no one would care. But then the messages started coming in, dozens of women strangers saying things like, "You told my story. I thought I was alone. Thank you for reminding me that leaving isn't weakness." I didn't expect that. Maybe that's my new purpose now, turning pain into something that helps someone else stand up faster than I did. And when I think of Gregory of Nina, I don't feel hatred anymore, just distance. Like watching a storm far out at sea, knowing it can't reach you anymore. Because I've changed. I've stopped defining myself by the way someone else treats me. I've learned that love doesn't have to hurt to be real, and that sometimes walking away isn't the end, it's the beginning of who you were meant to be all along. I thought the worst thing that could happen was losing him, but the truth is, the worst thing was losing myself. And now I've found her again. I close my journal, blow out the candle, and smile at the quiet. It's not empty anymore. It's mine.